Good day, everyone. My name is Samuel Apata. I am an instructional designer and e-learning developer. I have been designing e-learning using Articulate Storyline for about 8 years now. The latest version of Storyline is what we will be going over today in this lesson titled Getting Started with Storyline. Let's get started. Now, in this lesson, I will go over the basic functions in Storyline and introduce you to the tools that we instructional designers use. If you are already familiar with these tools, it's fine. You're still going to learn one or two things. And if this is all new to you, then this would be a great lesson for you. To get started, I have launched Storyline over here in my tab. I'm going to click on New Project, and you notice right away that Storyline is so similar to other programs that you may already be familiar with, like PowerPoint, um, Illustrator, or any Adobe product, pretty much, but mostly PowerPoint. It uses the same slide navigation as PowerPoint. So if let me back up a little bit. If you go to Story View, which is a screen we were on just now, double clicked, if you double clicked, you would get an expanded view of the stage. Now this is the storyline stage. This is where all of the magic happens. By default, the storyline has resized the stage for you. If you prefer a wider stage, which is what I normally would use, you can go up here to the Tools tab, go to Design, and change your slide size over here on the left. Um, there are some default sizes, and you can also customize the size to whatever you want. This is in pixels, by the way. I normally would go for the second one. It gives me a wider screen to work with, which is more real estate, depending on what you're trying to design. So you just hit OK, and automatically Storyline resizes it, which is awesome. Um, so pretty much in course creation, which is what we're trying to do, normally I'm assuming that you already have your content that you want to translate into an online course. So you may have a storyboard or PowerPoint presentation that you're trying to convert into an online course using Storyline. Here's where you want here's where that second screen is useful. So you can just grab things, copy and paste as you like. Now, to get started in Storyline, I will show you how to insert text and images, which is what you probably will be using the most, except you want to use videos in your course. But let's assume that you're using text and images. You want to go up here to the Insert tab, click on Text box right here in the middle, um, and let's give this course a title. So I'm going to type the same title as this session, which is getting started with Storyline 360. I am going to select all of that text by clicking and dragging, or you can use Command A, whichever one's easier for you. Go up here and change the font size to, let's say, 44. And I I prefer to use a different font for this. So I'm going to go with Articulate Extra Bold, which kind of gives us some I guess. And here's where you're starting to think, okay, what else can I do with this cover page? This is an introduction to my course. How about adding some images? So you go to Insert up here at the tab, click on Photos, and immediately you have this pop-up that lets you search for pretty much any business photos or anything you can find. I'm just going to look for some business photos and see what pops up. Um, since this is considered some sort of online class, maybe someone using a computer may be best, but I can pretty much use anything. So let me go with these guys right here. Um, and the way that I select that is by clicking that and clicking insert, or just double click and it automatically adds that to your slide. You want to drag it in the corners. Don't drag it in the middle. It's going to stretch your photo and make it look not so right. So always stretch photos from the corners. If you hover around the corners, you see that diagonal triangle, diagonal arrows start to pop up, and you can go up here and crop your photo to match that stage size. So if you click on crop and you drag this down until you see the stage, you can kind of figure out where that should land. Um, do the same thing for the bottom and click outside. Now your text is gone, so you want to send the photo to the back so you can see your text once more. The way that you do that is to right click on your photo and you send to back. So send to the back, and that automatically brings your text forward. Or that automatically sends your photo backwards. Now this text is now tough to read, so I probably want to add a shape over it. And the way that I do that is go up here, click on insert, shape, and click on the rectangle right here. I kind of just hover over the image and drag that out. And I probably want to give it a white color or something that's not so you go back to the home tab and you, well, maybe not white, I can use any color pretty much. So I've elected to use red. You click on that, you send it backwards by right clicking. You go to send backwards, and that automatically sends it to the back and brings your um, text forward. You can change your text color to white just so it's more visible. You can reduce the font size. There's no reason why it's that large, but let's give it, say, 36. You'll notice that the border is blue on this box. You may want to change that to no outline. And that just gives you this clean look that you really want. If you go to preview the slide, here's what it looks like. Just give it a second. Yeah, that's it. You have a title slide, which is fairly easy. So again, if this were a live class, this is where I would pause and ask for questions, but knowing that you can always just rewind this session, which is the benefit of having a recorded session. So we want to create the rest of the course. You can just go to the left panel and right click and click a new slide and basic layout and choose a blank slide. Now, what that does is it creates a new slide for you to insert text, images, or whichever elements you prefer. So now I'm going to assume this is the objective slide. Now, what I want to do is match whatever style I already have going on. So I'm going to copy this text and bring it out in here. Change that font to, say, blue. I'm just going to look for a dark blue color that works nicely. I'm going to select and change that to objectives, which also represents the header for my slide. Next, I want to add some text elements. So I would click on insert again, go to text box, and pretty much drag that out. I would state the first objective, second objective, third objective, you get the point. Now I would select all of that and give it a bullet point and change this font size to something that's more visible, right? But before I move any further along, I think it's best to introduce the tools and storyline to you. The Insert tab is pretty much where you're going to be spending the bulk of your time. This is where you're inserting photo elements, 360 images, shapes, captions, video, audio, web objects, text box, tables, just like PowerPoint, slide numbers, buttons, slider, which are the more interactive elements of storyline, dials, hotspots. I'll talk about that later on in this course if time permits. You know, these are places, these are all tools that are available to you inside the storyline. You also have this place where you can choose characters to add to your stage. You can either have photographic characters or photorealistic photographs. I tend to like the photorealistic ones, and many people agree with that. You can pretty much choose anyone and change their poses so it looks like they're talking to the learner, which research has shown that helps the learner feel like they're in class. So let's choose a more neutral style and maybe her talking, um, maybe presenting the objectives, for example. So this could be a good way to introduce the class. And we would click on insert and that automatically adds this lady to the slide. You can kind of scoot her to the side just so she's not in the way. Make sure she doesn't look like she's floating. And the way you want to do that is just drag it as large as you can because there's no, when you preview, you're not going to see the rest of the body. So here's what that would look like. And you see that automatically that's already adding some dynamism to your slide. Now the design tab is where you can choose different templates for your slide. So if you decide to use any of this inbuilt templates, you would just click on it, just like PowerPoint. It automatically updates that way. But I don't like using them, but feel free to use them. They're great for starting out. Now, on the transitions page is where you may want to add a fade in between slides. So let's say I'm trying to transition between this first slide and the second slide. All I have to do is select, say, push, and the next time when I'm previewing this entire project, I'm going to get that smooth transition between slides. And you can kind of see that here as it happens. See that smooth transition, just but those are things you can add at the end of the course after you finish building your course. Now, on the animations tab is one which you'll be using a lot. For example, if you wanted this lady who was explaining the objectives to come to kind of slide in from the right, what you would do is go to the entrance animation. Now this first one represents entrance animation, while this represents the exit animation. So that's denoted by red, and the first one is denoted by green, which shows it. It's a way to show that it's an entrance animation and not exit. So what I want to do is choose flying or fade or depending on your preference. Now that we have set up the sand the way that we want, we've just added animation to the lady, to the character that we have on screen, the cutout characters that are available to you in Storyline. We have her, just to double check, we have the animation flying into the scene. We can kind of preview that to see what it looks like. And you can immediately see that's just coming in from the side, which is a subtle way to call attention to that character. Animation generally in Storyline is used to call attention to objects. So we can add animation to the image, we can add animation to the text. The process is the same. We can select the text and add a subtle fade animation or floating animation or grow animation. There's no way to preview this inside of Storyline except you try it one by one. I've been using this. I've been using animation inside of Storyline for a while, so I can kind of, from experience, know what types of animations there are. So it comes with a bit of experience. You just kind of have to try it out. The fade is a subtle way to call out text. You don't have to do a bounce animation or a swivel animation. Some of them are required, considered kind of old school, if you like. So a fade animation is very universal. It's quick. You don't have to be too dramatic with your animations. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a fade to that text as well. So by the time that you preview this, you see that text just slowly fade into the scene. And that makes it easy on the eye. Um, but you don't want to add animation to every object because, like I said, it's used to call out important elements of a slide. So moving on, let's try to create a graded question this time. Now, the way that you do that is you right click on your existing slide, um, go to new slide, and hover over basic layout. Well, maybe not. Hover over graded question and actually click on graded question. Now you'll be presented with different options for a question. And if you've been an instructional designer or have taken any online classes, these will immediately be familiar to you. These types of questions are very common. You have true or false questions, multiple choice questions, multiple response questions, fill in the blank questions, matching drag and drops, matching drop down questions, sequence drag and drops, sequence drop questions, numeric questions, and hotspots. Now, for the purpose of this session, we're going to go with multiple choice, which happens to be one of the more common question types. And once you click on multiple choice up here, you will click on insert slide down here. And what that automatically does is it adds a graded question inside of your, not a slide. It adds a graded question slide inside of your scene. Now this is a form view. You also have the slide view. So the one, you can add your questions in here by just typing directly. But if this is your first time setting this up, I would advise you to add your question inside of the form view. So you might as well type what I just typed in here. I'll just go ahead and retype that anyways. And here's where you add your multiple choice questions. So let's say what is the color of this slide, right? And you may want to format that however you want. In my case, I just want to make sure that the learner understands that this is question one. Now here's where you enter your options. You can start with a question that's a distractor, and you can add a similar option. You can add an option that's a distractor or add similar options just to ensure that the learner understands what options they're being presented. So right now I have 3 to 4 options. Let's make it 4. And the correct one, obviously, is going to be white. So you want to make sure you make that selection in here. When you return to slide view, you see all of your options are populated on the slide. And you can format this however you want. I think just going by what we've done so far, we probably want to format it with the same type of format that this has. Now, one way to quickly, format text inside a storyline is to duplicate a format that you already have, is to click on that text object and go to Format Painter. You double click on that, you know, immediately you see the tooltip has changed. There's kind of like a paintbrush next to it that tells you that it has copied this text style over here. And if you pasted it, if you simply click on this, it adopts that text style. Now I'll do that one more time, or you can just rewind. You can rewind it and bring it back. Essentially, what I did was click on this text, double click on the format painter, and clicked on that one, and I just made it adopt that style. But we probably don't want it to adopt it all the way. So I can make this maybe text a little smaller, just enough so it's on one line. Um, and as far as this, I probably want to use this text style on this one. I can go again to Format Painter and go over here and just click on that box, which nothing happens. I guess there's no way to apply it on a question. I'm also learning, so forgive me. Let's change the font style instead, the text size instead, and let's make it 18, which matches, well, maybe not. This is 24, so let's make this 24 as well. Now it did think that I was trying to add another option, so let's erase that real quick. Okay, there's no way to erase that. It automatically goes away since there's no option in there. So make that 24. Exactly. So it's actually 24. It actually adopted that style, but we need to drag this out a little bit. Maybe not. I feel like I'm making things complicated, so I'm going to back up. All right. Now, moving on. If you were to preview this slide now, the way it is, you would notice a few things. So if you selected any one of those options and click submit, which this check mark represents submit, but we can change that to actually say submit in if we wanted. So it's all a matter of preference and what your learners are used to. So you're designing with the learner in mind. What are your learners used to seeing, and how can you make this easier for them to comprehend? Um, you immediately get a feedback when you do that. It's an incorrect feedback. It's telling you to try again, and you can select another option, maybe the correct option this time. But actually, you're not able to select that. So here's how we can fix that. We can go back to Form View and look up here. All of these settings are available to you under the first tab, which is the question tab. You can shuffle your answers if you want it. You see how in the option we just saw, green was at the top. That's because the shuffle is turned on. You can decide to disable that by clicking on the drop down menu and selecting none. You can give the learner more attempt by clicking this drop down and making it 2 or unlimited, which is infinite. But let's keep it a 2, which is a more common approach. So if you don't get it the first time, you can try again and get the question right. So after getting a wrong feedback, of course. So now if we decide, and here's where you can change the number of points for that question. So if I decide that 10 is too high, maybe I want to keep it at 5. That's assuming that I have a set amount of scores in mind that I want the learner to take. One thing you do want to do is, keep the numbers in a realistic state. So, 5s and 10s are common. So that way they all add up evenly, and not you're not ending up with some and random totals, which may cause problems. Anyway, I'll talk about that in another lesson. For now, let's go back to slide view and actually hit preview. And we'll see what those updates that we just made will do. So right now, there's no more shuffle. Green isn't at the top, it's at the bottom, just the same way that I entered it. And if you fail a question, you get an incorrect response and you get a try again this time. So not a continue, but a try again. And when you click on continue, you can select another option. And this time you get a correct feedback. And now you can hit continue to move on to the next slide. Since we don't have a next slide in this demo, we would have to create one. So again, you can go in and edit your feedback. So let's say you want the learner to, the goal of any learning is not to fail the learner, but to provide them with tips to help them succeed. So let's say you want to provide an incorrect feedback that could go something like, you did not select the correct response. The correct, maybe you can add a clue if you wanted to. The correct response is the opposite of black. That way they still have to kind of figure it out, but you're not giving them the, and you can also leave it as you did not select the correct response. So depending on the age of your learners, how much time they have, if it's a compliance course or not, that's where you make the best decision for the learner. So you go back and kind of hit, you probably want to add another feedback for when they get the correct response. So that's right, you selected the correct response, or you want to say white is the correct response, just to kind of reaffirm that option. So white is the correct response. That way, when you preview, that's exactly what you see. All right, hopefully some light bulbs are going on for you. Try again. This time, click on white. And you see that? You get the correct feedback. Perfect. All right, let's go with another question type, because it's very rare that you would only have one question type when designing assessment for your e-learning. So it's the same process. Let's right click on the existing slide, go to new slide, kind of scoot over to graded questions and click on that. That gives you the same options. You can choose multiple response this time. And once you have that clicked, you click on insert. And again, it pops up the form view and you have your slide view. Now, what we're trying to do is copy the text here so it's consistent. And or you can just type again if you recall how you had it set up the first time. So we want to make that question 2, and this time let's say what is the size of this slide. All right, question mark. And we can even throw in another prompt that says select all that apply, since it's a multiple response question. Select all that apply. I may try to go with something else this time, because if let's keep it a size, even though it's not realistic, but let's assume that 4 by 4 inches is correct, and let's assume that say 6 by, I don't even know which one is larger, or I don't know how to calculate it properly, but let's say 6 by 6 centimeters is also correct. And let's throw in some distractors. Let's say 8 by 8 inches. Let's say let's say 10 by 10 centimeters. Those are wrong. So let's check these as the correct response for this question. Go to slide view. You see that? It automatically populates. Now you can kind of scoot this down. It may be a bit tough to do that, except you actually drag this up and now scoot it down. That gives you some real estate up here to play with. Now you may choose to do the same thing that you did for the slide and click until you get a solid line. Go to home and go to Format Painter, click it twice. Automatically you see that brush again, and you click on that, click outside, automatically takes on the text style. Now back to your multiple response question. You can give this number of 24 so it's larger, and don't worry about this slider here. It's only telling you that you need more real estate. You can pull that down just to make that go away, bring it back up, and do the same for the slide. Pull it down, and however you want to format this. Again, you go to correct, enter the correct feedback, go to incorrect, customize your feedback however you want. Now, just clicking on preview, it's going to be the same, except this time you can select 2 answers rather than 1. See that? And you hit submit, you get incorrect feedback. Now we want to make sure that we also have the same types of settings. So as far as attempts, you want to give the learner 1 more attempt. You want to stop the answers from shuffling, so you click on none. As far as the points, you may decide to keep it at 10 or make it 5, or however many points you want to award for that question. Now that we have those set up, I feel like we should go over maybe just one more question type. Let's go again to new slide, graded question, and this time choose drag and drop. Now that's a common type of question type you would see. Click on insert. Same thing, you want to paste. I still have that on my clipboard, so you can ask a different question, like let's match the following. What can we match? The following letters to the correct alphabet, or the following words, I should say. Words to their correct alphabet. So you have okay, let's say animals. So you have rabbit, dog, elephant, and lion. All right. For match, you could say this is R, this is D, this is E, this is L, right? I'm not sure why I'm seeing two R's. Okay, that's why. So if you make this an E and go back to your slide and actually got it correctly this time, you can drag that. Now, there are many things you're thinking about as you create courses. So you're looking at the user experience. Will the learner know what to do just by reading the questions? Sometimes it's not so obvious. So you have to keep thinking about ways in which you can make this even simpler for the learner. I mean, one way that I'm seeing right now is, my first instinct will be to drag this guy to, which there's nothing to drag. It's not moving, but this is moving. You don't want your learners to waste time trying to figure out what to do. You want to present that information. So this slide may actually need some extra information, which we can add shortly. If you clicked, well, it's actually correct, but maybe the question is set up incorrectly. I don't use this question type a lot, so forgive me if you go back to form. Maybe it's wanting you to actually arrange them the correct way. So let's just enter the correct response first, and then maybe use the shuffle, or maybe it automatically shuffles, right? So let's click on play now and see what happens. So back to that extra information I was talking about. Let's add some information down here by clicking on insert text. You want to enter additional information. You could just call that out by saying important. Drag the items on the right to the items on the left. All right, you make that larger, give it a point size of say 20 or 18. You may choose to make this bold, just kind of call it out. I mean, there are different things you can do. You can even, add an icon. I'm sorry, I feel like I went too fast there. Go to insert, click on icon, and say important. Or, yeah, that brings up, a number of ways to show that something is important. You can also say information. And this is all inbuilt inside a storyline, so you don't have to go outside a storyline to look for these things. You just have to know about it to actually apply it. So when you click on insert, you can actually just add that. Over here, it's too large. You can hold down your shift while scooting it down from the corners. Don't try to scoot it down from the side or the top. It kind of squishes it. So you want to drag it from the corner while holding down your shift button. And this isn't a button, it's just a graphic that draws the learner's eyes down here. So in this case, if you were to attempt to take the question again, this time it has actually automatically shuffled the answers, and you can read this right away, drag the items on the right. That gives a better experience. So you're thinking, oh, okay, R is for rabbit, E is for elephant, D is for dog, L is for lion. And if you hit play, if you hit submit, you actually get the correct response this time. So that's how easy it is to set up a drag and drop. You just have to be intentional about it. So what are you trying to get from your learners? What makes sense to set up as a drag and drop interaction in that moment? All right. So now that you have three question types set up, how do you want to get the results? That's very easy. You do the same thing, go to right click, new slide, and click on results down here. Now that shows you the graded results slide, and you can just click insert slide, and that automatically populates. So in case if you have multiple question types, you can select those questions that you want to actually appear on the results slide. And you can also set up how much percentage you're trying to award for that. So is 80% a good enough passing score, or do you want to make it 100%? If it's a compliance course, you may want to make it 100%, but if not, you can make it 80. So give your learners some leeway. If you click OK, that sets it at 80. So now if you go ahead and preview this entire project, you can actually get to a point where your results slide displays to the learner if they passed or failed the course. So here again is your title slide. You can go ahead, get to your objectives. Remember how we set up the narration. Uh, you can, go ahead and choose the color of the slide, get the feedback, select which ones you feel. And finally, here's that third question that we created. Again, you want to drag them and match them. Hit submit, continue, and there are your results. So this is indicating that I passed with 30 points. Now, you will notice this menu on the left. Now, here's what your learners would see, and at any point in time, depending on how you set your course up, they will be able to jump inside of the course to any sections that you have set up. Now, it's important to label your menu items correctly. I haven't. That's why you see a lot of untitled scenes. That's the default value for slide layers. So this will represent each slide. In this case, I'll show you how to customize the menu in a second. But for now, let's click on this review quiz down here to see how we did in the quiz. So it's always important to give your learners that feedback because you're trying to ensure their success. You're trying to help them pass, help them learn something. That's really the ultimate goal. Maybe I should have filled some questions so that you can see the incorrect feedback. But for now, this one just says correct. Um, but it tells me what's correct, and if there was an incorrect question, it would also indicate that. Um, let's close out of this preview. And so these numbers really are controlled by variables, and those are inbuilt variables inside of Storyline. You don't have to worry about that at this stage. This is obviously an introduction to Storyline. So let's not worry about that. There will be other sessions that we'll dive a little bit deeper into what those are, what variables are, and how to set them up correctly. But for now, let us go into the menu section. And I just jumped. Here's how you get to the menu. So click on player over here on the right-hand side at the top, and that automatically opens up this menu section, which these are the features of Storyline. Now the Storyline player is what you're seeing, what we see when we preview a course. That's called a Storyline player. So it's almost like there's some type of scan for you to view your course. So this is your course, and that's the player. So what you're really trying to do here is customize that player. So all of these menu items all change the look of your player in one way or another. For example, this Futures tab, which is the one you want to focus on at first, is lets you decide what you want to include inside of your player. So do you want to include a menu? You can see if I turn this off, it automatically turns off. You want to keep it on. Um, you have your glossary, which is that's where you can keep all of your definitions and things if you have them. In this case, we don't, so let's turn that off. Your notes, your resources. So if you want to add an attachment, here's where you would add your attachments. So you can either decide to turn that on or off. You can name your slide. So let's say this is, I feel like we named it Getting Started with Storyline. So let's just call the name of the course just that. So Getting Started with Storyline 360. That automatically updates. Um, You can decide where to keep the sidebar, whether you want to keep it on the right, that's the menu, or you want to keep it on the left. I generally tend to keep it on the left. Um, if you want the sidebar to be collapsed when you start, so until you click on this menu item, if that's when you want it to pop up, you can do that, but it's also okay to just leave it. Depending on the course, if you want to upload a logo, here's how you do that. You search on your computer for a logo, and you may decide to add that, and it automatically populates on your player. You can add a cover photo, you can add the volume signal down here that lets your learner control the volume inside of the player, or you can add the player pause button. You can add accessibility controls. You can add a search button so learners can search for words. You can add a seek bar, which lets learner know the duration of your slide. So there's so much you can do inside of this menu section to customize your player and really give learners all of the options that they need to succeed in your course. Once you feel comfortable, you can also go to menu and rename these right from here, or you can also rename them right on your slide level. Um, Once you're done, you can attach your resources up here. You can decide to, add a file, add a title for the file, and hit save. And you would have your resources populated here. So if a learner were to click on resources, they can get to your attached resources. You can change the player style from modern to classic. If you're familiar with Storyline, this is what Storyline used to look like. So this is a classic player, but if you want a more modern approach, there's how you select that. You can change the color of your player. You can make it just white, for example, make it blue. Depending on the you always want to customize your player based upon your client or the company that you're designing for. So I tend to go with dark if I want to keep it neutral, or there's no requirement for me to customize a color fodder. But if you wanted to, here's how you can do that. You can customize your accent colors. That's lots and lots of controls. You can increase your font size, your caption size over here. And now this is real important for the navigation button. So your submit button, here's where you can tell Storyline to display text only. So you have previous and next, or just icon where you have your learners can kind of guess that this is the back button, that's the forward button, or you can have Storyline display both. I tend to go with both. all information is never too much information for the learner. So, um, yeah, so just so much you can do. Just keep exploring your player to see what your options are as far as customizing this player. And once you're done, hit OK. It automatically saves those settings, and you're good to go. So, in the context of e-learning, this is pretty much almost a complete lesson. I mean, I'm speaking hypothetically here. So, you have your title slide, you have your objective slide, which tells the learner what they're about to learn. And then you probably have your content slide. I mean, we can always just duplicate this slide and name this content slide. So let's say introduction, for example, and then, enter your content in here. So now you almost have a content slide, right? And this could serve as a template for any course that you're trying to build. So, if you want to name this course title, um, that would be okay too. That's how you rename your slides. You can double click or right click. Yeah, maybe double click. So title this objectives. It's always important to title your courses correctly, your slides correctly. I mean, in this one, you can title it introduction. All right. And maybe before the learner sees the quiz, you can add a quiz slide that tells them, again, you can just duplicate the slide. But remember, you're bringing in a lot of things like the narration that we added earlier. So you want to delete that. You want to maybe delete the text or make it, or, disable the animation, uh, and then, drag it back. That way you're not inheriting things you shouldn't be, right? So you drag back, do the same for the previous slide. And I'm only doing this because you copied the text, right? So just disable the animation. It returns it to a regular slide, a regular text box, and then, drag it back. So it's all regular, right? The only thing that's kind of constant is this lady moving, in from the side. And once you have all of that set up, so remember we were trying to create like an opener for the quiz. So let's say knowledge check, which is another way to say quiz. And maybe you want to delete the character in this case and insert something that shows a knowledge check. So maybe go to insert, go to icons, and maybe just say knowledge check. Let's see what that pulls up. No result. Yeah, you get that sometimes. You may try a different word, or you may even try to insert a photo. If you recall, the way to add photos is to go up here and click photos, and you can do knowledge check. All right, let's see what pops up. A couple ways, but maybe just someone writing or someone on the computer, or I just think it how I just type it how I think it, pretty much. So someone using a computer, that could be a way to show that someone's about to take a quiz. So this guy right here looks okay. Click on insert, and that automatically adds it to your slide. You can drag that up here, make it look good, and describe, oh, you're about to be tested, right? You are, or in the next screen, you will need to answer 3 questions. You must pass by 80% to receive credit for this course. All right, so that would be the introduction to this next slide, right? And once you have that, you're pretty much set up. Remember, you may decide to add narration by clicking copy, go to insert, go to audio, text to speech. You still have Joanna narrating this course. Click on insert, and that automatically adds that text. You may decide to give this just a cool fade. Yeah, that's pretty much how to set up that type of slide. You can do the same for the rest of the slides. All right, you can do that for the rest of the slides, and just once you're done with your course, all you need to do is publish. Now, in publishing, there are a couple of options. There's Publisher Reviews 360, which is Articulate's free LMS, which you can publish a course to. That lets your subject matter expert, that lets them be able to review your course and provide feedback. And I can show you a sample of that in another session. Otherwise, there are a couple of other options for publishing. You can publish to web, you can publish to video, you can publish to an LMS, which is the common one if you're trying to load this into a learning management system. And you can also customize how you want that to behave inside of the LMS. But for now, let's publish to Review 360, which is what we mostly use for the review process with subject matter experts. And that's going to take a while. It's going to kind of combine all of your elements inside of your course, images, text, and, turn it into a web page pretty much. And when you hit view project, you are going to see your course. Now that's really it. That's getting started with Storyline. That's how you build courses inside of Storyline. It's really been an honor being the presenter of the session today. I look forward to the amazing things that you create. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I will make sure that you get my contact. Always available to help. This if any of this piqued your interest, if you would like to learn more, I suggest there's so many resources out there. You can visit the Articulate Storyline blog at any time. Take part in the e-learning heroes challenges. I've been doing that for 5 years myself, and trust me, it's a great way to skill up. It's a great way to level up, and get into the field of instructional design. But don't lose focus. It's really about the learner, not about the SME. It's about the learner. How can you present this information in a way that makes sense to the learner? Yours in learning, Samuel Potter, signing out. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.